Everybody just waiting to be ready to start. Okay. Good evening, everybody. I am going to be live on YouTube now. Okay. Thank you very much for joining Global Church again. CV Masterclass with our own Lady Joy, who you can see is right beside me looking so pretty. She's going to teach us. She's not only pretty, she's intelligent and brilliant. Thankfully, I can relax and listen to what I need to learn today. But I want to encourage you to pay attention. But what I want to say beyond any other thing is to write notes. You see, if you don't write notes and just like, oh, I get that, I get what she's saying, I understand it, it's difficult to really know how to apply the things she's going to teach. It's difficult to really be able to put action plan into something that you haven't written down. You see, I normally say it many times. God writes down, not because he forgets, but because it's just a principle that he even depends on. If God writes down, what about you? I'm going to encourage you, please note it down so that you can act on what she's saying. Number two is this thing is going to be on YouTube. Once have you spoken, twice have I heard. It's one principle I like talking about. You need to hear and hear again. Faith comes by hearing, not once, but hearing by the word of God, which means that you need to hear the same thing again and again. Then what you think you understood, what you thought you understood, you realize, I missed some facts from what she was saying. Finally, this lady here, I experience is diverse. I have personally been mentored by her. She's giving me perspectives when it comes to HR matters, CV preparation. Now, the reason why we asked us to do this is we discovered that most of us forget that our CV is our representative when it comes to where people are making decisions. She's going to help us today to know what is good, what is bad, what we need to change. But look, I've spoken enough to allow other people to join. Quite a number of people on Zoom already. So without much ado, can you help me to welcome the only one that is Lady Joy in Global Harvest Church UK? Lady Joy, over to you.
Thank you so much, Pastor Bayo. Thank you so much. I'm always very shy when Pastor Bayo is doing my intro. I'm kind of looking around thinking, who is that they're talking about? It can't be me. But thank you so much. And thank you, everyone that has joined. I'm sure we're going to have more people. So keep sharing the link or the Zoom link wherever you are. Just a few just one housekeeping. We know that this is being recorded. So if you got your phone, ideally we should have it on, muted or whichever device you're using, just so that there's no interruption. And if people have to watch the replays, then hopefully it's seamless for them. And if you do have any questions, put them in the chat, or you can, use the raise hand feature so that we can do that. I haven't got any presentation, and it's deliberately that way because a lot of times what I've found is when we have classes like this, you have people kind of just going through slide, or they would say, oh, I'll get the slides later. So we intentionally want people to engage in these sessions. And so most of the things, first of all, are coming from my heart in terms of from really pragmatic experience, whether that's from myself being at the other end of, reviewing CVs, but also, from best practice across things that I have seen and I've heard and all of that. So yeah, without further ado, I will just go on. For those who don't know me, I work in HR. I have about 18 thereabout years. I'm actually looking forward to when I will say I have 20 years experience, in HR. And I think, I sort of lead the people team within Global Harvest Church. But what we do is just, kind of beyond sort of that leadership, it is the development piece. And over the course of this year, we're going to be launching different series for people to develop, because we know that we've got professionals, both in and outside of the church. We've got friends, that are colleagues and in careers, and we want to ensure that, people are well equipped to be able to do God's work in the marketplace. So this is the purpose for why we're doing this. Right. Without further ado, let's just jump in. So the CV Masterclass. Pastor Bayo kind of, I think he stole my note when he said, your CV is your representative. Your CV is what you send ahead of you to any organization and say, hey, this is me, call me, let's chat, that type of thing. So that piece of paper is very, 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 very important. because it's the first thing they see before they see you. If you're lucky, in very few cases, they see you before they see your CV, right? So, but whichever way, if they see 80% of the time, they would see your CV before they meet you, right? And the other 20%, and I've been, I think it's a privilege to be able to be on the other side where they see you and say, hey, I like you, can you send your CV, right? Whichever way. Your CV, if it goes ahead of you, it has to be representative of who you are, or who at least you believe to be and you want to portray to whoever is reading it. And if it goes after you, you want to be able to validate what they have seen when they met you. So the CV is a very important document. I'm going to make this class as practical as possible. So we're going to have conversations. At some point, I may or may not share my personal CV. And the reason I'm sort of saying may or may not is because one of the statements I'm going to make, which, people may or may not, people may kind of go, why, is there is actually nothing called the best type of CV. It doesn't exist. The way that I see it is, you know how you go for wedding parties or you go for a party and they have like a dress code. They tell you, we want you to wear red and green. The execution of red and green is very much up to you, right? You come there, and when you get to that party or that occasion, then you realize some people had a different kind of shade of red, some people had a different kind of shade of green, some people just went all red, all green. Everybody executed red and green in a very different format. That's very much how a CV is. People have preferences, people choose, people tell you do it, but then you have to do it yourself. The purpose of this class is to show you really basic things that enables you such that when you present your CV for a role, you are, and it's not 100% because sometimes it doesn't get to 100%. So that's not what we're trying to achieve. Most times when you get there, you are 70% sure that your CV for the right role gets the right attention. That's what we're trying to look at. So key things to talk about. Format. Is there any universal format for writing CV? The answer, does anybody think there is a universal format? I think I had talked about it anyway. The simple answer is no. There is no universal format. But there is a universally accepted type of template, right? We all know 90% of the time is on black and white. There are standard fonts that you want to use. Everybody seems to have their name somewhere on the right-hand side or the left-hand side. So, you put your achievement. There are those core ingredients, if we like, of what a CV should have, but the execution is almost like I'm going to assume that we have Ghanaians on the call. It's kind of like jollof rice. Everybody sort of know what jollof rice should be, but everybody comes up with different things. Some people put Scotch bonnet, some people don't. Some people like the taste of one, some people don't like the taste. That's literally what a CV is. But at the end of the day, you have to make sure that you're doing the right thing and it is exposed to the right people, because when a Nigerian jollof rice hits a Nigerian person, it's a match. Sometimes when it hits someone else, it's not a match, right? So the first root thing I want to make you understand is there is no universally accepted format, one, and so don't get hung up, because depending on where your CV lands, some people may go, wow, that's amazing. Some people may go, no. It's only in very few cases I have seen hiring managers interview somebody because they had a great CV. Literally 0.1%, where they just go, oh, that CV is really good. So nobody is going to appoint you because you have a great CV. So let's talk format. What is the standard format, that it's acceptable, right? That you can go with. So first thing, and I'll start from really content. I'm talking content of a CV here because it's a very practical class. And if you've got your CV, you can almost use it. You can almost do a quick check. Oh, is my CV sort of hitting this, right? Because bear in mind, I see CVs literally every week from one, whether it's a role that is being advertised or something. The first thing is kind of your biodata, the biodata page. Now, I've seen a lot of things that people do, and bearing in mind, over time, CV have evolved. Before, it was okay to put your date of birth, your full address, literally everything about you. With GDPR and all of that, it's less critical for you to put all of that information. So just your name is fine. Your name. You could put address as, just the county. For example, if you live in the UK, if you live somewhere else in the, outside of the UK, you can just put, it's just a county, Essex, Greenwich. London, that type of thing. That's pretty much all you need, and that's is enough for at least to get you there. And then, of course, a contact information and all of that. One of the things about biodata that I think is important for us, especially as immigrants, where we have amazing names, we've got like our names can go up to 20 syllables and 69 letters, is, should I put my full name? People always ask me that question. Should I put my full name on my CV? My name is Olua, and all of those sorts of things. I would say that I don't think it's, and I may be a bit biased here because I come from Nigeria, where we have amazing names. I get it, and I'm like, oh, what beautiful name. However, when you are applying to a diverse audience and you don't know where your CV go, one of the key rules is that, is it easy for the person to understand or to read what you've written? So ease is the key, right? If you have like really long name, you want to make it easy. So one of the key tips is just make it easy, right? If that people can understand. So you get to work and hear people, being called different names. And I remember working in an organization and there was a guy they used to call DJ. And I was like, oh, DJ, is he like a DJ? But his name was Deji. But that was a way. And initially, one of my culture shock was, oh, everybody was changing their names. But actually, for them, it was easy. So it's very much his preference, right? As long as it's easy. I've seen people from Indian descent put their full name and we have to somehow pronounce it, and that is absolutely fine. There is somebody on my team as well. She's got, in fact, she has a short form name, but her real name is something completely different. We call her something else. In fact, no correlation. So at the end of the day, it's ease. And one of the things I found is that it's actually quite nice to be able to say, oh, I know that my name is X, but you can just call me this, so sometimes it's that, but again, very much preference. But if, think about, is it going to be easy for them, to pronounce this, and all of that. So the first thing is ease. The next important content within your CV is a profile, just a high-level profile. Usually that goes next on, if you're looking at kind of from top to bottom, is your profile. So just a standard, I am, passionate. People have different arguments, write it in first person, third person. Personally, and from my experience, I don't think it matters how you write it. Joy is a, I am a, to be fair, there is two schools, depending on who you're speaking to, and everybody has their biases. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to, do we want to employ somebody? I don't think you'll be penalized for writing in first person or third person. So don't bother too much about that. A profile is very good because it sums up who you are in a very succinct, clear, crisp way, almost within 5 seconds of your CV being looked at. And for most of the managers that I have worked with for interviewing, they quite like that. Okay, oh, she's quite passionate about this, and all of that. I think over time, that profile has replaced like hobbies, which is towards the end. So if you remember, old CVs used to have hobbies. Everybody say, I play basketball or whatever it is. These days, when people put their profile, they'll talk about maybe a few key of their achievements and all of those sorts of things. And then they'll say, and I also enjoy or love football. So you could use that at very top. Again, no more than 4 lines, very short, very crisp, just something that summarizes who you are in a very succinct way. I think that's usually always beautiful. And then we move to the next format, which again is just, at what point do you start writing your about you? So people do it different ways, and I don't think it matters. But we will come back to bespoking your CV or just making it generic. You can start with something like go straight into your experience, right? Your professional experience. One of the things I have found is very useful in CVs is to have headings: profile, professional experience, skills and competencies, academic experiences, those sorts of things. Kind of, again, the key is easy to read. If I see it, is it easy to read? Does it, is it easy for me to comprehend and what you're trying to write? So then go straight into your experience or your academic qualification. But let's assume that you just want to go straight into your experience. There's various ways that you can write your experience. You can write it. Some people do chronological order. So in terms of the most recent one at the top, and then kind of it goes, or, or some people just go by relevance, the relevance of the role or your experience to the role you're applying for. Again, not so much, but sometimes when you go by just the role, the relevance of the role, it confuses hiring managers because they'll be like, oh, is this your current role or is it the one that is 3 lines down and all of that? So I would say just keep it simple, as simple as possible. Go most recent role first and then going backward. That way they can see whether there are any gaps in your employment. And I think for you as well, it helps to really reflect on your experience over time and you can tell a story, because remember, when you go for interview, you're telling a story. You don't want to be confused about which role you wrote first. You really want to go, this is my recent role. The last one before that was this and that kind of thing. So keep it as simple as that and just go by most recent role first and then kind of, play it back. That's the simple thing to do. Now, depending on where you are in your career, and I'm going to address, if you're just sort of starting out in a particular career or you've got a lot of experience, would determine how you write it. The way that I write as what I would call kind of a mature professional, if there's any word like that, with considerable years of experience, is I usually start with a role summary. I would say, in this role as director of blah, 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 leading a team of X, reporting to X, I lead X, that kind of thing. And the role is responsible for delivering X, Y, Z, something like that. Again, no more than 2-3 lines. I'm able to capture that as succinct as possible. And then I go straight into kind of key deliverables or responsibilities, and I then keep those short. It's important for you to be very, very clear about how you're writing those. One of the things I always say is that they should capture not just the output, but the impact. One of the things I've seen about CVs is people would write the output, responsible for doing this, responsible for doing that. Well, all of those is good, but it's important that you have impact, So I'll give you an example. Delivering engagement to ensure that we increase employee engagement by X%, something. So just not so much output, well, a combination of output and the impact. Yeah, it's always important. If you can have it quantifiable is better. Sometimes some things cannot be measured in quantity, i.e. numbers, percentages, but you can qualify them, to increase the engagement of, improve people's experience, those sorts of things. It's important to write those as well. Some of the things I've also found to be good is people put their achievements to say, top 3 achievement, and they'll write that before going into their experience. So you could do it that way, but I'll say be careful with that, because the thing with CV is you want your CV to be so good and capture enough information to attract or seal your interview, and you want to keep enough information that you can sell at the interview. So it's almost, you have to do a kind of balancing around how much do I want to put in here versus how much do I want to keep so that I can sell that at interview. So, and plus you're also working with space, because we're going to talk about the length as well, because I know that question, people have that question. So your CV, depending on where you are, for me, I quite like a summary. And the reason that a summary in your CV is important is 99% of job advertisements today, you can go on LinkedIn, go on Indeed and check right now, they always have a summary. You don't see job descriptions that just go responsibilities XYZ. They'll tell you a summary about the role and the organization, what you're supposed to be doing. So if you can mirror that format, you are almost mirroring what they would do with the job descriptions to say, this is my role summary. And that is also a very clean, sort of important way to almost capture the essence of the role you are applying for in short lines. So they will go, oh, okay, this person manages global teams. Oh, okay, this person has led this. Oh, okay, this person has delivered that. Immediately that's a covert way to just capture that. So always have like a role summary, very short, and then jump straight into your responsibilities, but make sure it's not just capturing output in terms of what you're responsible for, but the impact that has or is meant to have. So it's important that you do it, and we can come up with some examples. So that's about that, and then you go straight through. One of the questions people always ask is, oh, how many of my roles should I put? Because if you do this, you probably, if you've had 10 jobs, you're going to have 10 pages. So I'll just cover length of CV very quickly. I would say length of CV should not be more than 3 pages. should not be more than 3 pages, ideally. And I have seen CVs of CEOs. And sometimes I remember the first time I saw a CV of a CEO, I wanted to know what do they write? What are they even writing in their jobs? And I saw this CEO, this was about 3-4 years ago. I saw a CEO CV and it was just 2 pages. They didn't capture anything like experience, what I do. All they wrote in their last 2 roles as CEOs was achievement. Led the company through XX change and delivered X billion savings. That, literally, and it was no more than 5 for each of those. Role profile, the organization they worked, summary of their jobs, academic qualification, done. And so, but again, I'm saying that lightly because that's a CEO level, because at that level, there is so much more that happens and they can tease out from just a CV. So with CEOs, it's not starting from a CV. It's literal, most times when we cold call, they see their profile, they like it. They just want that CEO and they go up, to go and have conversation with them. But that's just to show you that even at that level where you expect that they've done so much, they still try or manage to squeeze it into as fewer pages as possible. So think about no more than 3 pages. I've got 2 CVs. One of my CVs is 2 pages, depending on the role I'm applying for. The other one is 3 pages, but I squeeze it into 3 pages. And let me tell you how I've been able to achieve that. As you progress in your career, you should detach a bit from other roles, right? So when I was just starting out, it was important to capture everything because I've just done 3 roles. So I might as well, write all the 3. But as you progress and, you find out that it's mainly the last 2 or 3 that are relevant anyway. And so you capture those ones, and those are the ones you kind of do a summary for, the responsibility, including deliverables, as we said. And then the rest of them, you capture them under the heading of earlier roles or early careers. And all you need to do is just write the job title, the organization, and the timeline in terms of whether it's 2009 to 2010. That's all that you need. And then put that, because that way it shows you're just not going into detail. But the most recent roles, most times is really all about what the hiring manager is interested in. And if they need more information about past role or a role interests them, they may say, oh, in this year, you worked in this organization. Can you tell us about this? And then you can give them more information. But nobody's going to penalize you because you didn't write all of that. So if you have any questions, let me just check in the chat. So Busola is going to be my assistant today. Busola, if there's any questions, please just flag and let me know. But you can put your questions in the chat so that we'll make this class as interactive as possible. So that's around capturing, just your I guess the core of your experience. Other things you can do, and remember I said, apart from your biodata page, we go into short profile about yourself, just short summary. You can decide to go straight into experience, professional experience, or sometimes I think it's good to also do academic qualification, especially if it is important to have certain academic qualification for the role you're applying for. And academic qualification, because it can be very short as well, is something that I want to put at the top. So if you look at the job description and it says you must have, PhD in something, you want to put that at the top because those are things that are easy to tease out. So the way, let me get you into the mind of an interviewer or not an interviewer at this time, somebody that is shortlisting the CV. They look at the person specification, and they literally from your CV, it takes no more than 10 seconds, right? To just scan through. So if you have some things towards the end, it's like, so what you want to do is profile, yep, they've worked that. Okay, yeah, I can see on their title, they've got this. Okay, I can see that. Oh, qualification, they've got this. Then they're interested. Okay, so just want to clarify for name, address, etc. What's the ideal name, phone number, email addresses? Do we need to include home address? You don't need to include your full home address. In fact, I would say never include your full home address because you don't need to. So if you see organizations, even when organizations collect your full address, they tell you based on GDPR regulations that they would only use it for the purposes of that. And to be honest, your address has zero impact or input or advantage, except the role is in a different location. Then it becomes important. However, let's say a role is in Manchester and you live in London. All you need to put is, I stay in Stratford, London. And Stratford, London is enough to tell the organization in Manchester, oh, this is going to be a bit of a commute. Now, for some people, they may be interested in relocating for that role. But because you've put an address, full address, they may just, some I've seen organizations sometimes disqualify people because it's going to be too far for them, you know. So I think it's important to be very tactical. I don't think full addresses are important because it's unnecessary. Plus, we want to be very careful about our personal information as well. So you don't want to put too much information. I would just say the city and where it is. Now, if you are looking to relocate, it's always important to kind of put it there, but we'll get to covering letters, where I will talk about why it's important to have covering letters, because you can put a bit more information on there. I don't know if anybody joined the last call, anybody on this call, but something interesting happened at work. If you remember on the last call, I was talking about how I talk really fast. And I remember I had a role that I was offered because the chief operations officer at the time told me, I have never heard anyone talk as fast as you. So on that basis, I'm going to offer you the role. Of course, I qualified. So that was just an extra thing. But something happened at work recently. So I had just updated my Teams app to the new Teams. And because of the AI, the advanced AI, it prompts you and tells you when you're talking really fast. And for the first time, AI actually said, you're talking really fast, try and slow down. I thought, what? I said, so humans have been giving me feedback. AI has given me feedback. Now I have to slow down because Teams couldn't keep up with the transcript, with how fast I was speaking. And it was so interesting to me. Trust me, I've told everybody, like, it's just such a funny story because I'm thinking, how come Teams caught me out? Anyway, that was just an aside to say AI is really, really important. But back to addresses and all of that. So yes, put basic London, UK, I think is just fine. You put your phone number because they need to be able to contact you, and you put your email address. You know what, there's just a side note on emails. I think everybody on here is mature. There are some emails that make some recruiters laugh, like really, whatever, sexy.com, those sorts of emails. I think we should avoid it as much as possible because again, remember we said your CV is your representative when you are not there. You're right. You don't want to be laughed at and not get the role. Trust me, a lot of things go behind the scenes that people never get picked, you know, because what kind of email is that, you know, and we see that a lot. So sometimes it's not the biggest error in life in terms of a CV, but you just want to make sure that it's not tiny things like that that then impacts on your, you know, your opportunity or, you know, to be selected. And we need to bear in mind that we are dealing with people and people come with their biases. So I coach managers every single day around biases. Some people have biases or, oh, you know, I don't like this, I don't like that. So if there is nobody there to put them in check, they would just go, I just don't like that CV, you know, that email address and all of that. So come up with something quite straightforward, you know, and all of that. Yeah, but I know sometimes, again, we've had CVs that we've had since when we were 12 years old. So you know, and I'm trying to make my children have standard email, not the fancy ones they come up with or the ones that, you know, the system automatically generates for you. So make sure that your email, you know, it's representative of who you are or who you're trying to present yourself to be. Okay. Yes, just state location. Second question, how do we articulate transferable skills on CV when we don't have direct experience and all of that? So I will come to that because we'll talk about transferable skills. Yeah, but let's hold that question. So that's that. And then we then go into another important part of a CV is like qualifications or professional qualifications, because you know some roles require that and they'll put it in the person specification. So again, really short. You can put it in a table format to say these are my qualifications. The way that I do mine, for example, I split it into and I think I should share. Do we think it's a good idea for me to share my CV on screen for just 2 minutes? Yeah, let me do that. Now, bear in mind, I'm not saying that I have the most amazing CV, but I think is because again, I usually don't like to say, oh, this is a standard, because people are just different and your career path could be different to mine. So let me open this up and then I would share. Let me see if I can share this. So it says I cannot modify the advanced sharing option. So that's why I don't think I can share.
No, you can share.
Can I?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, oh, I found it. So let me just share what my CV. Can everybody see? So you can see at the top, for example, I've just put Chelmsford Essex. And then I kind of have a profile which just talks to sort of all of my experience. And then what I've done is, because I have, well, I believe I have a lot of qualification and core competencies I like to sell, I just put them in this table format so that, otherwise if I split it, then it takes a bit more page because I'm trying to, this is my 2-page CV. I've got one that is 3 pages. So I sort of put all my experiences or sort of my academic qualification and my core skills and competencies. And then I go straight into experience. As you can see, I kind of talk about my role summary that I was talking about, because sometimes that helps to give a bit more context into your role, how many people I lead. I then talk about all of that and I do the same. And you can see I have only captured 3 roles in all of this. As I go through the role, remember your most recent role, you talk about it because it's in present. Your previous roles, you talk about them, sometimes past. So for example, I say here, I led the design and implementation of the renewable energy systems people strategy. I talk about all of those sorts of things, like HR project lead and accelerator of the One Race, those sorts of things. And then here I talk about my past or early HR roles. So you can see, I literally just go the role, the year, the organization, done. So it's my 2-page CV. Nothing fancy, but it's good enough to get interviews. Okay, so I'll stop sharing. And I can bring that up if we need to. So that's just to show you, really short, really sweet. You don't need anything fancy. It's easy. Remember I said easy to read. People get it. That's kind of all that you need. You don't need anything too fancy. You don't need 10 pages. Managers get CV fatigue. Once it's getting to 3-4 pages, they are wondering, why are you writing? And everybody moves on. You just want, this. I have lots and lots of calls and interviews just based off of this CV. So you don't need anything too fancy. It's easy to read and all of that. And I change it all the time. Another good tip, your CV must be looked at literally all the time. I'm in a phase now where I'm actively looking for jobs because my current role will be ending in June. And so I'm actively looking. Oh my God, I do my CV literally every day. For every role I apply for, I make a change. In fact, I was speaking to an agent the other day, and he said, oh, Joy, we just talked about one experience, but I can't see it on your CV. Can you write it? Because I think it's going to be important. So even your agent is looking out for you to make sure that you capture. So you can't have one CV that you use all the time. You have to keep refreshing and say, what are they looking for? Can I add it? Because you can't add every single thing on your CV, so you have to keep adapting it, to fit the role that you're looking for. Okay, so academic qualification, you've seen how I've written mine. Depending on how you want to position yours, because you've got skills, you've got competence, you may want to do it on that table format because it captures hopefully all the things that you need, or you can split them and just write, basic things. So some people will just put the master's degree and maybe 2 certification. I've got a lot of certification and sometimes it's quite relevant to my role. And so I just tried to squeeze them. That was my creative way of squeezing them in, in a table format that is hopefully readable for the shortlisting managers. Okay. Any questions before we continue? I think someone has got a question here. Okay, so aside CV in recent times, suitability statement are also usually asked by some recruiters. Okay, what ingredients are essential to stand out? So suitability statement, I'm not if the person can come off me to ask what that means. This is the first time I'm hearing the phrase suitability statement. Are you referring to supporting statements? Is that the same thing where people say, you see, they call it either supporting statement or like covering letter? Is that what you're referring to? I just want to be sure.
Yes, definitely very supporting statements, cover letters.
So right, that's what you mean. Okay, fine. Okay, brilliant. Okay, so yes, recent times. Yeah, I think it's not just recent time, to be honest. I think suitability statement or supporting statement have been a thing for a very long time. But sometimes people get lazy because, after writing a CV and writing all of that page, they can't be bothered to write suitability statement, because suitability statement or supporting statement force you to write something that, you've not written in your CV. So it forces you. So here are quick tips, and I was going to cover that. For those statements, it shouldn't be more than half a page. It shouldn't be more than half a page. Nobody has time to be reading all of that. It shouldn't be half a page. And when you apply directly to an organization's website, most times the supporting statements are optional. So they are not mandatory. So you really don't want to invest too much time writing pages and pages. Plus, most of the information should already be covered in your CV. All you do need is really short and sweet stuff. So I'm going to give you a quick example. I applied for a role recently with an organization that I really love. And I was saying to my husband, this is my dream job. And it's exactly the role that I do today. Literally, I can step into that organization and just, start flying kind of thing. And I thought, what is going to make me stand out? I need something to make me stand out. And so they were asking for a supporting statement. And so I wrote a supporting statement. But because I had done the role so well, I was able to capture what I believed that they wanted based on the job description in 2 pages. And guess what? I got an interview based off of that because I was so sure, but I knew that my CV wasn't going to be enough. So I took the advantage to write a supporting statement. And your supporting statement, let me see if I can find one and just show you an idea of what perhaps a supporting statement could look like. And again, bear in mind, I am not trying to use mine as a format, but I think it would be unfair for me not to show you perhaps something. So I recently applied, this is one of the ones I applied for, it's an organization called JLL. And so here is my supporting statement. As you can see, half-ish a page, right? That's what I've got. And here's what I've written. I'm thrilled about the prospect of taking on the role of UK Head of HR Advisory at JLL, drawing from my pivotal experience at Johnson Matthey, And then I said, one of the things they wrote in the job description was they need somebody to come and help them to deliver the target operating model for advisory, because that's what I'd done. I, of course, used my covering letter to capture that because I don't want to repeat what's on my CV. And I said the term I designed comprised of 3. You can see I missed my off there. One of the things you have to bear in mind is really your spell checks, comprised of 3 crucial elements. 1, a tailored structure, enabling infrastructure, and cultivating high performance culture, and all of those sorts of things. Under my leadership, the team provided XXX, and I wrote all of those things. And then I talked about, while this transition may render my current role redundant, I have garnered invaluable knowledge, skills, and experiences that I'm eager to contribute to the JLL advisory team as the head of that, and I'll be grateful for the opportunity to discuss how my past, so that's literally all you need. But what this does, it just helps you, let me stop sharing. It just helps you capture the supporting statement. Is not to repeat what's on your CV, but to give a new information that may just sway the decision between should we shortlist them or shouldn't we shortlist them, right? So you can see I've creatively said, I've written everything here. What they want is this target operating model. I did that. How do I, shrink that into a short, crisp statement? And that's got me an interview, okay? So that's how you sort of write that. So it's really important because I'm finding more and more organizations tend to be more, they tend to be very much attractive to people who take the time to write a covering letter. So sometimes there is a psychological thing around, they just didn't drop a CV. They actually went and they wrote a covering letter. So I found that if you take your time, you do that. One of the things I would also say is, I know a lot of people, and the last time we talked about how many roles it takes for you to actually get your main role. And you can shrink that by just focusing on a clear group of jobs you want to be applying for, so that all you need to do is to tweak your covering letter, and so that you're not just flinging CVs, and it's almost like casting, your CV all over the place and hoping that you want to make sure you really do a good job. You're capturing the organization. You can see my covering letter. I'm capturing the heart of the organization, and all of that. Yeah. So hopefully that makes sense to you. And I can share this if people want. I can share it with you so that you can sort of have a look and just see if it will work for you. Okay. It's correct. Oh, it's correct. Oh, somebody said my English was correct. Yeah, so maybe it wasn't, because I'm sure I did spell check and he didn't flag that out. But you also make sure that you need to do your spell check. So what's wrong? So someone is saying, what's wrong in just putting previous job description in CVs? Pastor Bayo, were you asking that question? What were you trying to ask there?
Yeah, I was asking for people because at times, so what people tend to write is, let me use a simple one. They look at their previous job description and that's what's on their CV. What were you? I'm an administrator. I checked email. I reported, made report for management.
Yeah.
And that's what we just did to say
I-
that's what I did on my role.
Yeah.
What's wrong in that? Because I tend to see more of that kind of CV.
Yeah.
Does it matter when you are shortlisting? Does it
It
help?
does. So it does, because so if you go on LinkedIn now, right, and you just check for a random job, LinkedIn now, they tell you how many people have applied. The first thing is your heart would sink, because when you see a job that says 200 applicants, you are number 201. So the likelihood for you to be shortlisted is, oh gosh, they have to go to 200 to get to you, except they've got a really advanced system that shortlists for them. And trust me, I know there is AI, but people still sit down to actually go through shortlist because they want to be sure they're getting the right people. Everybody is going to write that. I did this, I did the manager, so office manager, I cleaned the office and all of that. There are some other people that would write the impact. So let me give you a quick story. And I don't know whether I shared this the last time, and I'm sure people would have heard this. There was a story, and I think it's not a real story, I guess. It's just a kind of, what do you call it? It's sort of a fictitious one. It is about 3 bricklayers that were building a cathedral. And so they use this a lot for different things. But let me use it in the context of CV. Three bricklayers were building a cathedral. And somebody came and asked the first one, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm just laying bricks." Because that's exactly what he's doing. He's just laying bricks. The second one says, "Oh, I'm just laying bricks so that, the other person can come and do X, whatever." And then the third person say, "I'm laying bricks, contributing to the building of a cathedral that would host X thousands of people every year, blah, blah, blah." Who do you think is going to be shortlisted if that was the number 3? So it's as simple as that. So everybody they were all laying bricks. One understood the impact of laying bricks and he puts it and he sold it as that. So that's a short story of what we're trying to do. You can put that, or you can put, "I'm doing this because this is what it does." So I think that because always helps. First of all, it makes your CV look, okay, this person knows what they're talking about, because organizations always look at impact, right? Is this person going to come here and just lay bricks, or want them to actually understand what we're trying to do as a business? Trust me, it makes a lot of difference. I have seen it happen 1,001 times. If you just put selecting files for a manager, doing Outlook, nobody cares about that. This is the person that went the extra mile to say, what's the impact of that? So always try to find the impact, no matter how small. It gives more robustness into your experience. And even for you, is a practice to say, what is not so much volumes, but also what's the value that I bring, and we always need to kind of look at value as well. So I think that's why that's important. Okay, so moving on. So we've talked about some content. I'm just mindful of time. We've talked about content, what it should look like, format, and all of that. I've showed you mine. Some of the other things that I wanted to talk about, let me just get my notes. So I've said, keep it simple. It's important to keep your CV simple. 2-3 pages, I think, should be fine. Anything more than that, people will just go, "What are you trying to say?" And you may even get lost. You find you're repeating things. So if you are in a career like mine, as an example, where is HR, right? There's so much difference in HR that you will do. So you can't just be capturing 10 jobs. Everybody knows the HR BP, this is what they wrote. So you don't want to sort of repeat that. Okay. Other key things that I need to talk about, so I've talked about listing all of your qualifications or not. So these are some of the things I've found. Some people list even up to their GCSEs, and that's fine. But as you progress in your career and as you progress in your academics, you need to let go of some things because it's not important. Just as an example, before you get your first degree, everybody knows you have to have a kind of GCSE or WAEC, depending on where you're coming from. So nobody wants to see how you had 28 stars in WAEC. And I know that at that point, it was precious to you. Congratulations, but please, we now know you have a first degree. So that is no longer important, right? And so I'm sure you get the drift. So as you kind of go, because again, remember, we're trying to shrink this to space. We're trying to manage space. We're trying to just capture what is important. No one is going to select you because, wow, they made 5 9s, 20 years later. Nobody's going to do that. So try and let go of some of those. Should I include my hobbies or not? I think gone are those days where we used to hear, oh, I shortlisted them because they like football. It could be nice, but like I said, you can tactically put that in your profile to say, I enjoy football. It makes it human. Another thing that I've seen is some organizations these days like that, and they would ask you, and if they ask you, write it. Another letter, I'll see if I can find it. I applied to a fintech organization and they wanted fun. They said, tell us something fun about you. And it took me forever because I'm like, I do not have fun to come up with something fun. Guess what? I was also shortlisted for that role, although for some strange reason, guys, don't even judge me. I missed the email. They had sent me an interview for the 29th of January. I saw it 2 weeks ago or last week. I'm like, how did I miss this? What the hell? I really loved this role, but they were asking for fun, something fun. So some organizations will ask you because they're a fun organization. So they will ask you. If they do, by all means, put all the fun stuff. If they don't stress. You don't bother yourself, okay? So I wouldn't bother too much about that. And so do I need a profile? Other things, I've talked about that. Generic or bespoke CV? I would say bespoke when you can, especially as you're progressing in your career. If you're just starting out in that career, as generic as possible, because at that point, you're going to be applying to literally any single role you see. As you progress that, you're more choosy, more selective, then you need to be more bespoke. Plus your achievement are now, for example, I'm finding that for every single, I can do many roles, but my one current role does, I can't have a CV to cover all of them. So when I'm applying to this, I tweak it to suit that. When I'm applying for another one, I tweak it. So I'm doing a lot of bespoking. So invest the work. Now, doing your CV applying for roles is an investment. So make sure it's a worthy investment. Try and bespoke it as much as possible. Read the job description, see some of the things they're asking for, see how they've written for some of the things, and check if your CV captures that, because that would really help you. Okay, so generic. Another thing is, don't lie on your CV. So I read somewhere today that says 40% of people lie on their CV. And I'm like, oh, that's a lot, because organizations will check. So organizations will check during when they offer you the role, or some of them would even check. They do check. If you notice when you apply for a role, sometimes the recruiter goes to check your LinkedIn profile. They're just checking. So don't lie on your CV. However, some people may ask the question, but what happens about job titles? Sometimes some internal job titles. I had a friend recently who applied for a role where she says, Joy, my internal job title doesn't make sense to anybody. It's literally an internal one. What do I do? I said, well, you can come up with a job description that is universal, but you can somewhere put it in brackets to say, call it what the internal job title is. And, and all of that. So you can do that, because sometimes some people may see your job title and just go, this is not the role, but that's the role. It's just, they call it something different. So in that case, that's not a lie. That's just you trying to say, you're coming up with a universal job title that makes sense to the person or to the role that you're applying for. So be very careful of that, and, kind of use the right dates. I know some organizations are more anal than others in terms of, how strict they are when it comes to lies. For example, I've seen cases where people say, it comes back as a red flag because somebody had said they graduated in June and the reference said actually it was September. So some organizations will mark that as a red flag. Some organizations will mark that as an amber. Some organizations will say, well, the truth is, it's possible that, what date do we mean? Some people say, I submitted my thesis in September, but I graduated in November. That kind of thing. But, as long as you're able to have a justification for the information you're putting, but make sure that it's an honest one. And if there is a mistake, let it be an honest mistake, not a blatant lie that you've just put on your CV, because you'll be caught out if you were offered the role. And, we don't want that to happen. Okay. Yeah. So your CV should be a statement of facts, and you should be able to stand by every single thing that you're putting on your CV. Okay. Another thing I would say for CV is that always make sure that you're very familiar with your CV. You read, that you're able to tell your CV like a story. I know most of us, well, hopefully all of us are Christians on the call. And even if we're not, I usually use my CV to pray, because I reflect and I go back to all the rules, and I'm so grateful about how I've grown. And it's lovely to be able to tell a story about your CV through and through. You get familiar so that when you are asked, you can tell a story on your CV, right? And sometimes that they say, oh, right, this person knows what they're talking about. Okay, so that's important. What else have I got? I think that is most of the things I've got. I now want to let's open up the floor for questions. Anybody has any questions? Any questions? Okay, let's see. Let's see if people put anything in the chat. Thanks, Busola. What's the red, amber, green marking of CV? Does that happen? Red or CVs are marked the way. Oh, so the red. Okay, so the red is just is referencing, not for the CVs when they do references. So when people are offered role, most organizations will ask for references, and they're basically checking facts. They're checking facts, when you and all of that. If there is any misinformation, let's say you put one date rather than the other date, some organizations could mark it a red, some of them will mark it an amber. So in some organizations I've worked, if it's anything that is just different from what you're putting in a CV, they don't care, that's a red. In some other organizations, when it comes to date and it's just a few months apart, they mark it as a number and ask you more questions and to say, oh, Bayo, you had put that you worked between 2010 and 2011, whereas when we checked, they say actually you left December 2010, that kind of thing. And as long as you have a valid reason, sometimes it's possible you've just not updated your CV before the application or you applied before, as long as you have a valid reason. But we have to be careful because most times they will check these things. And for some of them, they could just, retract the offer based off that because it could border on integrity, depending on how strict the organization is. Do organizations compare previously used CVs? In other words, I apply for 2 different roles, 2 different CVs. They don't. I don't think they do because everybody and I've seen that happen a lot actually, where I'll say, oh, I think I've seen that name before. And when I see the CV is different, actually, I think it's a good thing because it just shows you're bespoke in your CV for the relevant role that you're looking for. So I would say they don't do that. However, sometimes they share CVs in organizations and, as long as it's not like so different, like you put something completely different in one. Most times when we're doing different CVs, to be fair, they carry similar information. It's just you're highlighting some things more than the others just because of the role you're applying for. So I would say it wouldn't matter too much. And I'll be surprised if HR professionals say, oh, it's a different CV, therefore, because you're meant to be updating your CV all of the time. So I don't think there's a risk in that. And even if there is, it's a very small one. Transferable skills, yes. So transferable skills, how do you put that on your CV? This is where covering letter or suitability letter comes in. I think it's very important to be able to do that. If you are applying for if you're applying to a role you have not done before, it's extra work that you need to do. This is what I would say, use agencies as much as possible because with agencies, you can talk to them. Whereas with organizations, you're just applying and hoping somebody sees it and likes it. Make sure that you're speaking to agencies. There's something somebody told me, which I like. She says, Joy, get the agencies to work for you. Call them up and say, hey, I've got this skill, I've got this experience. However, this is kind of what I'm looking for. And they will do the work for you, especially if you're very impressive. So that's 1. 2, be ready to do volunteering roles because you need to get references and all of that. And volunteering roles are all over the place. They love it because it's easy labor for them. You get to prove yourself, you get to get reference. So I would say do that. So sometimes in your application, you can just say, I'm looking for volunteering roles to build my experience in this. And I've done that. In fact, I remember one time I used a volunteering CV for a paid role and the person called me and said, this is a paid role, you use a volunteer. And I'm like, look, I'm just looking for the experience. So, well, if you want to pay me, amazing. But make it clear so do volunteering. Also have covering letters because covering letters give a bit more information about you and all of that. So that is what I'll do that. And then work with your network. Work with network because sometimes people are able to hold your hand and take you into the organization and all of that. And again, this is where faith as Christian comes in to just really trust God for favor when you apply for roles like that, because that plays, as the spiritual side plays a huge huge factor, one that can't be taught in a masterclass, to be honest. It does play a huge factor, because I've seen people that just go, I just want to interview this person. And like I told you, I had applied for a role that I wasn't shortlisted for. And 6 months later, I was called and they just saw my CV and I was the only one that was interviewed for that role. So it plays a huge, huge part. So if you've got transferable skills, try and tweak your CV to fit that role that you're looking for. But it's also good to have opportunities like volunteering opportunities where you have time, where you have the opportunity to actually carry on the role, because that will be the difference. And you don't need too much time. I would say I have somebody in my team who only joined the organization and joined my team about 4 months ago. She's got another role in another organization doing, being paid higher and all of that. So it takes a short while for you to just have that, but having it on your CV is all you need. Okay. How do we get agencies? Online, by calls, both. You online, I would say, and then actually book a meeting with them. Sometimes they would invite you to go and do all of their, do all of the kind of registration and all of that. So agencies are very important. A lot of people sometimes don't understand or don't appreciate the impact of agencies. Agencies are like a second CV. They represent you. They would say, oh, I've got this amazing candidate. She's so good because XYZ. So you want to impress them as much as you want to impress the organization, because they are going to be speaking for you. They need the commission that they get on, placing you as a candidate and all of that. And you need them as well. So take them as seriously as you would take an organization. Okay, so yeah. So I would say online, call them and say, I'm kind of open to a role and I want to talk to you and all of that. So, and it's free, 100% free. They don't charge. Always have covering letter for each application because it speaks a lot. Of course, always do. I would say always do. Always have that. Salary negotiation has to be the next masterclass. I am a pro at salary negotiation, if I may say so myself. So I have helped a lot of people navigate and negotiate salaries, negotiate redundancy pays, and all of those sorts of things. So we're going to be doing that. We're going to be talking about navigating organizational politics, because I think that's a really important one. And also navigating kind of exit and performance improvement conversations, because people go through that. And at what point do you say, right, this is getting to the borders of performance, improvement plan. What do we need to do? So that before it gets, well, most times when people are talking to us, it's now at the final stage and you're almost doing, your damage control, whereas you can handle this like a pro from very earlier on. So if you have any topics that you think you want us to cover, please reach out to anyone on the call, myself, Olaide Busola, Pastor Bayo, and we'll be sure to arrange something. Olaide is asking, in a market like UK, do professional qualifications really count when included in your CV? They do. So this is the misconception. People think UK don't care about professional qualifications. It depends on the role that you're looking for. And most times they will just put degree or equivalent. If you have a degree, I would say put it on there, right? It's really important. Why wouldn't you put your degree on there? It is important. So put it on there. And again, it's literally one line. You're not saying more than the degree and the university and the time you attended. So it costs almost nothing to include that. I would say include that on your CV. And plus, it is your investment in yourself, right? So why would you want to take it out? Include it. And trust me, I have seen where degree does matter. It does matter. So I know that it depends on the organization. Some organizations appreciate more pragmatic sort of certifications compared to others. If they do, then that's fine. But if you've got a degree, why not? Put it on there. I put all my qualifications there because I paid for it. So I'm going to have to put it on there. Esther is asking, is it okay to write a covering letter with AI and then tweak it? Oh, very important question. So there is a whole talk about AI. This is something that the organization I currently work for decided to do. We say, if we find out that AI wrote your CV or your covering letter, is automatic disqualification. So I know people talk about AI and all of that. Be very careful. And organizations are doing it more and more because, for example, ChatGPT, organizations are now embedding it within their work because they're using it as an amazing tool. But the truth is, we'll get to a point where all of us are writing same scripts. Everybody's CV looks the same because ChatGPT wrote it for us. Be very careful. Here's what I use ChatGPT for. Sometimes you're writing a statement, you just want a rewrite or a retweak. You want to see how it will sound. You can pop that on ChatGPT, and organizations encourage you to do that. And you say, oh, do I like that statement or not? It must feel authentic. It must feel authentic, right? It has to feel like you. And remember, you're going to work for in an organization, or you're going to interview where they look at your application and realize this sounds completely different to the person that we've just spoken to. You don't want to get to that level and they go, this is such different. I've seen that happen a lot where we'll say, and their CV was so impressive, it's such a shame. Well, it's such a shame because ChatGPT wrote it for you. And unfortunately, ChatGPT cannot interview for you. So we have to be very careful. Technology is amazing, but again, technology really is not going to replace you. So when it comes to presenting yourself in the interview, you will do it. And so you better make sure that you can speak exactly as ChatGPT wrote for you also. Somebody wrote Zero GPT to the rescue. I don't know if I understand that joke. So better question, professional qualification versus industry experience, which is better? That is, I want a role. Okay. To be fair, I think that industry experience at the end is more important. People are not going to take you on because, oh, you've got a master's, whereas somebody has got industry experience, because it's all about execution. Can you do the role? What your professional experience or qualification does for you, it kind of gives you a bit more breadth. And more than anything, it helps you to do your job very well, right? So whilst that is nice and it's important, the truth is I would pick somebody anytime that has got relevant experience rather than an array of qualification. But so again, at the end of the day, your qualification must translate into your competence and experience. That's the most important thing. If it doesn't, then it's a problem. You're just having a stack of qualification. However, the caveat is if you're just starting a career, you would have more qualifications and experience. This is why volunteering is important. This is why talking to agencies to help you present your CV forward is very important. Yeah. What role does a professional summary play from a recruiter perspective? So a professional summary helps the recruiter to share that as a short broadcast to their group. So I remember having a conversation with of some recruiter a while ago, and he said, oh, I have a network of organizations that I, from time to time, send different profiles. And that's covering letter or summary really helps because it just says, Joy is a fantastic professional that has XXX experience and has managed X number of people in this industry. Reach out to me. So that is what that does for them as an agency, helps them to just articulate it. Most times they would write it for you. But again, remember that it's you representing you. So I would always say, own your brand as much as possible. You want whatever they're putting out there to be truly representative of who you are, rather than, people just writing all stuff about you. So Gbenga, I don't know if that answered your question, but from a recruiter perspective, yes. And even when I speak to agencies, I still make sure that I write a covering letter because I've just personally got used to it. And I feel it's another avenue. I can't capture everything on a 2-page CV. I have a covering letter. I just add a bit more. It puts a bit more flavor. And you can write, really, that's an opportunity to express kind of yourself more, and all of that. Any other questions? Let's see. And also another thing to do, right, is test your CV, okay? Test it out. And I do that a lot. I see what CV attracts the most, shortlist for me. And I say, oh, that's the format I'm going to be using. So I've got like, 15 CVs. I keep naming them different things because I keep changing it. Which one attracts more? The way I wrote this one is this, is 2 pages working. Should I take this other side? So test, again, like applying for a job, depending on where you are at the phase of your career, it's a job on its own. So test your CV and see, right, if I put this out there, do I get calls? And sometimes ask for feedback. I remember asking a recruiter, do you think my CV captures this? And I said, oh, Joy, it's perfect. So sometimes, but again, bear in mind that people are different. The way people receive CVs is very different. So your job is not to satisfy everybody. Your job is to make sure that you're giving the right information in an acceptable format, which is easy, simple to understand, is as honest as possible, captures right information, puts output as much as input, that sort of thing. And yeah, guess all, and it represents you well. That's sort of all you need. So test it out, I would say. Apply for roles and see what you get back. If you don't hear back, check and see, is it a CV problem, or is it a job title problem? Is it, whatever it is, it just have captured my job description or my achievement or my responsibilities. So keep trying it, and you'll get to a point where you will sort of know the CVs that sort of work in the marketplace or not. Okay. How do we get, okay, let's see, right. Okay. Any other questions, or we can just, we have gone over time by 10 minutes, so. And it's 10 p.m. in Pastor Bayo's world. Okay. Someone says, I'm currently looking for a job with sponsorship because sponsorship license in my former organization was revoked. Is it a good idea to give this information to new recruiters? Because most recruiters ask if one will be needing sponsorship. Yes, really, yes, non-UK. Yeah, very important question. So from my experience, to be honest, most roles, organizations are, well, they're not obliged per se because it's really a choice, but most times they put information there to tell you whether this role attracts a sponsorship or not. And some of the other times they would ask, would you be requiring sponsoring at any time? So I would say, if you check that and they say they don't require sponsoring, but for me, in that situation, don't apply for roles that would not give you sponsorship. Another thing you can do is there is a bank, and I believe it's the Home Office list of organizations that have sponsorship licenses. That's always a good place to start, to say, okay, I have a list of these organizations that would sponsor, I would be applying to them. But here is something else that I would say. Even when roles are not, they don't indicate whether or not they would they would sponsor, sometimes they do sponsor. So again, the faith element comes into play. Some roles you get into the organization and you realize the manager would say, oh yes, I would offer you. What I would say is be very open, apply for fixed-term contract roles, even though they are short contracts, because you just never know. You may apply for a fixed-term contract role, you do so fantastically well, and they just go, oh, we want to retain this person and we would actually sponsor. So that's what I would say. With agencies, with recruiters, I think recruiters tend to be, they want a perfect candidate. So they may just go, oh, this person is going to require a license. I don't think we would, and they may not be, I guess, they may not want to sort of advertise your CV as much as they would for somebody who doesn't need a license. But yes, Pastor Bayo, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to add to that question because I have been asked that question again, but let me give you my perspective, and please feel free to correct it because you know better from HR perspective. One of the things I tell people is it's not wise to lead with sponsorship question if you're looking for a job. You're asking an employer to invest in you when they have not been convinced about you. Mm-hmm. So somebody come to me and say, people have called me before. Excuse me, sir, I need sponsorship. The basis of them asking me to give them a job is sponsorship. What impressed me in an interview first? Let me want you.
Yeah.
Go to the point of, I must have this candidate first. Before you, I don't even know whether I like you. You're asking me to sponsor you. I don't even know whether you are the best candidate. Yeah. We are talking about sponsorship first. I like what you said, but I might be wrong. First, apply for jobs that sponsor. But the fact that they didn't say anything about sponsorship, what I'm hearing, Lady Joy, is the fact that they didn't say does not necessarily mean they are not sponsoring. What I think you're saying, but correct me if I'm wrong, is impress them first.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Then when they're about to offer you the job and it gets to that conversation, okay, do you sponsor or something? But if you do with sponsorship without proving quality, I think you're asking them to invest in you and that's a risk they might not be willing to take.
Yeah, yeah. And then, yeah, and you're absolutely right, because, sponsorship is, 3 years and then 2 years. So it's a long-term investment. So your organization wants to be sure that, first of all, the role is one of the roles that indeed justifies a sponsorship, and two, the individual themselves is worth, if there's anything like that, the sponsorship. So I would say, be very open to applying to roles, as long as you have something to work in immediate term. And when it gets to that bridge, you cross it. So this is the thing. And, I know that not everybody here goes to Global Harvest Church, but that is why you all have to come to Global Harvest Church, because we hear a lot about faith and the power of God over things like this. So even in the workplace, I've seen people get sponsorship, the weirdest roles, and I'll be like, how did this person get sponsorship? But it's just favor. They applied, they were good, and they do that. So I'll say, I think, Pastor Bayo, you nailed it there. You don't present the need for sponsorship first. You present the value that you're offering first, and the organization will make a decision as to whether, if it's really good. Trust me, sponsorship becomes easy rather than putting sponsorship first, because most times they may just say no. Okay. And then non-UK experience on CV in the UK market. I don't think that matters much, to be honest, because organizations these days are global, processes tend to be global, and I've seen people who got sponsorship applying from a different country to the UK. So again, these are the things I would say, though. This is the caveat. The caveat is most titles, for example, in non-UK roles, and I'm speaking from Nigeria here, are very different. Key examples, most people that work in bank, they'll say they're a banker or they're a marketer. That makes zero sense to UK financial services industry. They don't understand the meaning of marketer or banker. They understand different things. So that's why the job titles must match. You have to put it in a phrase and terminology that they understand. And the type of work you do, you need to be able to translate that into the UK. You have to make it more UK friendly. Yeah, I think that's the phrase. Make it more UK friendly. So it really doesn't matter if it's a global organization, put it there. And sometimes it's actually very attractive that you've worked in a different country, Africa, Canada, Americas, whatever that is. Put the information on there. And yes, as long as you have eligibility to work in the UK, I don't see that being a problem. I've recruited people from India, different countries, and it's just perfect. And they did absolutely well beyond candidates that were based in the UK. So it doesn't matter, but your CV has to be UK friendly. It has to make sense. You don't put a job title that people then don't understand, and all of that. So some companies ask if the candidate needs sponsorship from the first application questions. Yes, they do. But here is the thing. Ideally, and I'm saying the word very loosely here, ideally, that information is not used as selection criteria. It's typically, so there are two sides to application. There is the CV and all of the standard stuff, and then there is other things. What recruitment would do is that they hide information, because if you notice when you do that, they ask those questions. Those are like, they call them, so there's equal opportunity question where it talks about disability, race, all of those sorts of things, age group and all of that. And then there is other supplementary questions, and the visa tends to be one of those ones. Or if you've worked in other similar, organizations, they don't use that as part of the shortlist criteria, but they do use it at some point to make a decision. And they'll say, oh, if this person needs a visa, they may say to you, we would have liked you. However, we've just noticed you need a visa sponsorship. Unfortunately, this role does not attract sponsorship or whatever it is, and therefore we're not able to offer. But that's not used, or should not be used as part of selection criteria. It shouldn't be used, but they collect it for data collection purposes and all of those sorts of things. And then to help, later on, because for example, if you look at the disability question, they would not ask that to make a decision because that would be discriminatory. However, in maybe appointing the person, if there's any need for reasonable adjustments while they're in the role, they may use that information. Okay, so that's why the information is important. So okay. Any questions? Any further questions? Let me just go back and check. Any other questions? How come nobody is coming off their cameras today and speaking? We want it to be an interesting class.
I think Abiola was going to say something.
Okay, was she?
But then she muted again. Abiola, were you going to say something?
Uh, no, I was just kind of consenting to what you did say about sponsorship. I mean, you have to be what's the investment? I mean, for the employer to be able to do that for you. And what she also said about having a strategy, going through a list of companies that that actually offer sponsorship, and being strategic by applying to those companies. And of course, if you prove your worth, and I mean, if they see that you actually bring value to the organization, of course, they'll be willing and to be able to do sponsorship for you. I mean, when you did say that, I mean, I was just saying you were on point on that. Yeah.
Okay. Like Lady Joyce said, it is 1 hour ahead where I am. I wish you guys could continue forever, but I think it is 2 hours past my bedtime. But first and foremost, I want to say, if you don't mind helping me to drop in the chat, thanking Lady Joy for your information, what she's given free of charge, people pay for. So if it's just to say thank you, at least it's not difficult for you to type and say thank you. That's the first thing. Not to clap, to say thank you in the chat. That's what I'm asking for. And that is a payment for what she did tonight. Number two, though, when she was reading out those information, and yes, AI did say you are fast, and she was fast today, but awesome. I wanted you to notice something. A lot of things that she was saying that you could think you heard, but you miss. Can I ask you to please, for your own good, just replay this session on the YouTube page? It will just activate some of the things you're doing wrong. I'll give you one testimony that happened based on the last session she had with us on the candidate. What do they call it again? Becoming something candidate. She taught us how to approach interviews. I remember that one of the ladies that normally call me was not in the session, and I was like to her, "Why would we do something for you when you're looking for a job and you were not part of it?" She said to me, because I was personally upset with her, she went online on the YouTube, listened to and this is true story. I can give you a name if you want. She listened to what Lady Joy taught. She called me back and told me that, Phoebe, she was talking to me that she wished she had listened over and over again to what she did, because she had made a lot of mistakes in that interview. This girl today applied what she learned. She has a job. She's looked for a job for months, got nothing. I'd gone to interviews saying rubbish, and I use that word strongly, rubbish, but she applied what she was taught. Truth unapplied does not become useful. I need you to please listen to the things she's taught so that it can inspire you. It can help you. You're not going to give us your salary when you get it. You're not going to pay her anything. Our joy is that you progress because she helped you. But the next one, I think we need to do that. She said two things. She's committed to two more things at least. Number one, negotiating salary. I know she's very good at that. She was born for that. If you are looking for, let me just be serious here. Let me behave myself.
Negotiate like a tiger. That's what I say.
That she's very good at that. And then there was a second one that you said that I was trying to.
We talked about organizational. So we're working on a lot. We're talking about organizational politics. We're talking about managing performance, because that's a huge issue where people get exited, contracts get terminated based on capability, and a lot of redundancies come there. So is that, and also another one is just managing exits from an organization. But if people have things that they also want us to talk about, that would be helpful to help us plan for the year.
I just know that she's committed to at least 4. So we hold her to our words. They will let us know. Please reach out to your contact. I invited you. Let's have your details so you can know we are interested. But this has been very good. Thank you so much for everybody that said thank you to. I really appreciate you, Lady Joy. You know that apart from the fact that you have the brain, you have the beauty, you also have the articulation. But thank you so much. Guys, It's a good night already. I am going to bed. Thank you.